and good morning if you're on the West Coast or somewhere in between. Thanks for being here for today's Bloomerang webinar, Silent Auction Strategies, 5 Easy Changes for Higher Revenues. And my name is Stephen Shattuck, and I'm the VP of Marketing here at Bloomerang, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. And before we begin, I just want to let everyone know that we are recording this presentation, and I'll be sending out that recording as well as Sherry's slides just a little later on this afternoon. So if you have to leave early or perhaps you want to share the content, this afternoon. And as you're listening to today, please feel free to send questions our way via the chat box right there on your screen. We'll both see those, and we'll be able to answer just as many questions as we can before the 2 o'clock Eastern hour. So don't be shy at all. We'll get to as many questions as we can. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Sherry Truler. She is from Red Apple Auctions. Hey there, Sherry. How's it going?
I'm fine. Thank you for having me.
And this is fun for you to be on the video chat. We don't usually do this, but you were a good offer to do it. So good to see you as well as hear you. And I'm just going to brag on Sherry for a little bit before we get started. Sherry works as a charity auction educator and as an on-stage auctioneer. She helps schools and nonprofits across the country plan more profitable benefit auctions. In fact, her galas have raised anywhere between $15 to over $2 million he sold at events with crowds of over 1,000 people. She's also a prolific writer for her own blog and other fundraising sites, and her advice is tapped by thousands of auction planners seeking to improve their benefit auctions. And she's been covered by Northern Virginia Magazine, Town and Country Magazine, and lots of other places. So Sherry, this is really awesome to have you. I'm not going to take any more time away from you. Why don't you go ahead and get us started?
All right. Thank you so much, Stephen. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for coming out today and carving out an hour. We're here to improve your auction. It's one of the areas of an auction gala that needs improvement in most cases. We're going to cover some of that today and give you some real strategies that you can use to get started on improving your return on investment. We'll cover that in a second. But I just wanted to say, welcome to the Silent Auction Strategies. If you've got questions, and Steve already covered this, but I want to reemphasize it. I know that when I take webinars, I like to go ahead and ask the question when I remember it, because otherwise I will forget it. So when you think of that question, if you want to pop it over there on the left-hand side, we'll get through as many as we can, regardless of whether they're related to silent auction strategies or not. Oftentimes we think about an auction being just items that you're selling. But the truth of the matter is that any more auction galas or fashion show auctions or golf tournament auctions, any event that's got an auction component to it, they've got a lot of different components other than just items. You're talking about fund-a-needs and raffles and games. It's unbelievable everything that's being put into them now. So we're going to go ahead and get started here. My understanding is that we've got about an hour to go through the content. Okay, thought maybe Steve was breaking in there for a second.
Yes, that is true.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. What did you say?
Yeah, that's about right. About an hour. That's right.
Okay. Oh, okay. Got it. So a little bit of background on myself, and some of you may be joining me from the Red Apple Auctions campus. Other of you might have been over there yet. But I had started my life in the corporate world, and before was working at my own company. My most recent corporate position was working for General Electric, and I was doing their events. I was in the marketing department, eventually got moved into doing their corporate events, holiday parties, trade shows, management meetings, special incentive trips, the whole 9 yards. And I had I had an interest in learning how to do the fast talk that auctioneers are, which is called the chant. I don't know where this came from, but I was interested in that. So I did a Google search one day. Lo and behold, I found out there are such a thing as auctioneer schools. And lo and behold, there is one called the Missouri Auction School that's located in Kansas City. Perfect, I thought. I'm from Kansas City, I'm from Kansas originally, but I've got tons of friends who live in Kansas City. I thought I'm going to head back there, go to a week of auctioneering school, learn how to do the chant during the day, and at night I'm going to have drinks with my sorority sisters. I had the whole vacation planned out. Well, they don't hold their training in Kansas City. They hold it in St. Louis. So I spent a very cold March in St. Louis learning about auctions, and we had many speakers come through. livestock and auto auctions and real estate auctions. And we had a gentleman come through and talk about benefit auctions. And as he was talking, I thought, this guy knows a lot about auctions. But you know, he doesn't necessarily know a lot about events. And that was something that I was entrenched in because of my position at GE. So I came back to Virginia, thought I would learn a little bit more, started to volunteer at a ton of different events. Usually you put into the registration area or the procurement house, one of the two when you're starting to volunteer like that. So I did a lot of that. First thing I noticed is we have a lot of volunteers that are running benefit auctions. Now, you may be a professional on the phone here today, but even if you are responsible for running your auction, I would be astounded if you didn't have a committee that was helping you that were volunteer-based. It sort of depends. Some associations are a little bit more different in that way, but boards of directors usually get involved. They tend to be volunteer-driven. Volunteer, they're passionate, but bless their hearts, they're doing this once a year and they just kind of forget how to do things. And you can't blame them because if you're only doing something once a year, how can you get really good at it? I always think back to being in 4-H when I was growing up, and at that time I was an expert at baking bread because I had to bake bread all the time. I got a champion ribbon in bread making, but I couldn't make bread today if my life depended on it because I'm not making it every day. That's kind of how auctions are. When you're doing them once a year, we tend to forget, well, did this work or did it not work? Did it work because we had more people there, or did it work because we changed the items? Did it work because we had a different venue? It's hard to understand why certain things are happening in your auction. And that's one of the things that I started to pull together for all these volunteers were processes that would work. So it's flash forward 9 years here to kind of make a short story long there, but to flash forward 9 years here, then with all of the processes and different things that I teach, it's been really good. We've gotten a lot of publicity. I've been on a couple of television shows, one with Isaac Mizrahi, got some nice outfits out of that, ladies. On the print side, I've been featured in a lot of different magazines. That was kind of highlighted by Steve. And then I'm doing about 50 auctions right now across the country, from California to Texas, Oklahoma, Wisconsin, Kentucky, New Jersey, New York, Florida, all along the East Coast and so forth. What I teach in my classes, products, and everything works. People don't change that much regardless of the states that you're in. There's certain psychology that can be used to help boost your revenues, and you'll learn some of those today. It's my belief that any time you are having an auction, if that auction, whether it's part of a fashion show or whether it's part of a traditional sit-down dinner gala, whether it's part of a chef tasting event or a wine there's 3 components that are going to go into making that event rock. It's going to have to first have item acquisition. That's the first leg of my 3-legged stool analogy that I like to use. Just like if you have if you have a chair that's got 4 legs, you can kind of balance on all 3 and make it work throughout the course of your dinner. But if you got a 3-legged stool, by golly, all 3 legs need to support their weight. Item acquisition is one of those 3 legs that needs to be strong. Looking in realms of this area, we're looking at things like items should we get, what kinds of items should we get, who should we ask, how should we package things, does it make sense to put these 2 things together, or should we keep them separate because we'll make more money if we keep them separate? Gosh, we got this donation, should it be a raffle, should it be a silent, should it be something that we put into the live auction? How do I turn down items graciously? How do I make my get my board focused on the stuff that I want to go get for our auction? All of those fall into item acquisition. The second leg of the 3-legged stool is audience development. This is, at GE, we used to say how to get your butts in the seats. How do you get the right people there, though, for your auction is a bit more critical because you want people who have disposable income and who, if they're not already passionate for the cause, can become passionate to the cause. So when we look at topics in this realm, we're looking at things like honorees. We're looking at things like sponsorship programs and underwriting programs. I've got a client right now in Milwaukee. Their big thing is sponsorship. We're spending a lot of time talking about their sponsorship program because that's the area of growth for them. We might be talking about seating charts because I know you're spending a lot of time on seating charts if you're doing a traditional sit-down dinner gala where people get to choose where they want to sit and so forth. We talk about changing the mindset so that instead of being in this mindset of I'm coming to get a deal, which is incredibly prevalent at silent auctions, we change that to coming to support the cause. Those are audience development. The third leg of the three-legged stool, which just blew right past us, we're going to jump back up there. I don't know what happened there. Why'd that go so fast? Operations is the third leg of the three-legged stool. This is where we get into processes like registration and checkout, technology, if you're using any sort of technology, whether that's at the very basic credit card swiping technology to mobile bidding, for instance. We talk about themes, decor, how you're marketing your event. All of that falls into operations. And wouldn't you know that today most of the focus is right here. It's in that marketing segment, drilled down into the silent auction and specifically 5 key features. I was up in Philadelphia, this was probably a couple of years ago, running an on-site workshop. And before we got started with the content, we went around the room and asked people about their auction and what they were struggling with. And this one woman piped up and said something that I'm going to share with you in a moment. But the obvious point, in fact, maybe I want to jump ahead and I'll go back. What she said is every spend takes away from our bottom line. And this is not the mindset that I encourage my auction chairs to have. If you start treat your gala like a business, you start to make investments here and expect payoffs, you start to run it like a store, like Macy's is a store, you're going to have greater success. If your gala is a business, your silent auction is your high-end, or not your high-end, it's more of a traditional boutique. So if you think about anything from a store that you like to shop in, ladies, a dress shop. It could be something as massive as Macy's or Lord & Taylor or even Marcus, depending on where you like to shop. But when you're looking at those stores, there's not much difference between you and them. You've got opening times, closing times, so do they. You've got items that you've got to sell, so do they. You've got to merchandise, so do they. You got to figure out how to and get credit cards and checks, so do they. The big difference between you and them is that they're open 364 days a year. You're open one night for 4 hours. Even if you're using technology, maybe that's 2 weeks out of the year. You can't put things on sale. You're not sending out coupons if something doesn't sell. So the way I see it is your marketing needs to be extraordinary because you're expecting people to march into your store, buy everything above value if possible, and leave all in one night. So if we can borrow some of these marketing tactics from the corporate world, you're going to see a lot more success. And you know what? They spend millions of dollars trying to figure out how to get people to buy more. All we need to do is steal a few of those, and we're going to start to see better gains in our silent auction. This woman, as we were going around the room, had said everything we spend takes away from our bottom line. This is not a business mentality. As you start to make in your auction and you don't see a payoff, then don't do it again. But if you see the payoff, that's where you're going to start to appreciate some better returns. Case in point, this is Kathy Klotz. She is in a little tiny nonprofit in the southeast corner of Minnesota. And Kathy, for I believe it's 18 years, they would make $3,000 to $5,000 in their little silent auction that they did every year. And she was getting frustrated because after 18 years, you're thinking this is a lot of work for $3,000 to $5,000. So she went to her CEO. She said, I heard about this class that's taking place in silent auctions. I'm really getting frustrated. I think that we could benefit from this. She took the class. She's done some other things. In 2 years, she went to over $41,000. For the first time ever, they have a surplus in their scholarship program, which is what they raise money for in their gala. Learned techniques in a little tiny town that you'd have trouble finding in southeast Minnesota. If you want to hear her case study, it's about a 15-minute interview where I talk to her about what she did to make a difference. You can do that underneath the free resources tab on my website. Second group, this particular one is a school. Usually we have some schools that dial in here as well. I see hands in here. Thank you, Jared. Thanks for weighing in there. This particular woman on the left, her name is Robin. Robin was an auction chair. A couple of years ago, I started working with her at a smaller school in Richmond, Virginia. They have 130 girls, I think, that go to that school. My details might be a little off on that, but they may say it in the testimonial there. They have girls that are 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. For 10 years, they would do an auction, and they would raise about $19,000, $17,000 to $19,000 in that realm. Robin is sitting there. She helps her husband in his business, so she's got a business mind. She's like, this just seems like a lot of work for $17,000 to $19,000, and she's got such a nice Southern accent because here in Virginia, further south you go, you start to hear that nice drawl. She's like, I just can't believe we don't make more than that. So she went online. She bought a book on benefit auctions. She read it cover to cover. She then went online. She saw that I happened to be speaking 3 hours away. She better put her best friend Janie in the car. This is Janie over here on the right. Put her best friend Janie in the car. They drove up and speak. On the way back, Janie said, well, Robin, what'd you think? And Robin says, I'm going to make 3 big changes because I see we need to improve. First thing she did, she bought software to help registration and checkout. Second thing she said is, we shouldn't be doing a potluck dinner. I'm going to talk to somebody and see if we can do a proper sit-down dinner. And she said the third thing we're going to do is, in that case, they were hiring an auctioneer. Janie said, they're never going to approve it, and you're never going to get approval for it. Well, she found a mom to be the caterer. She went and talked to the committee who approved the software. Robin ended up paying for me out of her own pocket. At the end of the night, they hit $68,000. It was a $50,000 gain after 10 years of making $17,000 to $19,000. And if you go online to this particular link down here, you'll get to be able to hear Robin talk about that. You'll hear her best friend Janie. And this woman right here, bless her heart, she was one of the people who said we should not be spending money on our auction. It's a mindset shift. It's perhaps the biggest shift that I'm going to share with you today, is changing your mindset that if you make the smart investments, it will come back to you. So what are the smart investments? There's 5 that I'm going to share with you today. There are many others that you can employ, but the truth of the matter is that at least if you can get started out, you'll start to figure out what's going to work best for you. Silent auctions nationally are making 50 to 65% return, meaning that for every dollar donation that's given to you, you're turning it around on the table and making 50 to 65 cents. That's horrible. I think that's a pathetic return. But if you start to employ some of these techniques and others, you can start to get that up. I've got a couple of clients who make 100 plus in their silent auction. That means they get something donated that's worth $40. They're able to turn that around and they make more than $40 in the end result. So if you can start to get better returns on the same donations, my gosh, it's less work for you and you're making more for your nonprofit. So as we look at sound here, we've got, let's think like a business. Do stores use sound? Heck yes, stores use sound. I was just doing this, talking about this concept somewhere else. I'm like, does Kmart use sound? I grew up in the 80s. Kmart was very big on blue light specials. Attention Kmart shoppers. It was a very well-known phrase. Well, let me give you an example that's a bit more current here at Safeway, which is the big supermarket chain in my area. I live in the Washington, D.C. metro area. Safeway does a special on Thursday nights. They have $5 meatloaf, and on Friday nights, they do $5 rotisserie chicken, which normally at Safeway is like $9. So that's a good deal. So I'm going down through the deli department on a Friday night, and there's a few rotisserie chickens sitting over there, and I see the sign. The Friday special is $5. I'm like, ooh, that's a good deal. So I take one of those, and I put that into my cart, and I continue moving. The deli manager gets on the mic, and he's like, attention Safeway shops. This is Jason in the deli department. We have 5 rotisserie chickens left over here in the deli department. Take home a hot meal today, instead of 9. Come on over, only 5 are left. Pushing my cart around the end cap, and I am almost mowed over by a 30-something-year-old guy who heard the announcement, and he's coming over to get one of those 5 rotisserie chickens that's left. That's how sound can sell. So what are you doing in your silent auction to ensure that people know where the deals are, that they know where the specials are? And by specials, I mean whatever's not bid on yet. So this is how you can start to promote that. If we look here in one of the, this is one of the auctions I did. I think this is up in Pennsylvania, actually. It was in Pennsylvania. There are overhead speakers up here that you can see, and I did a close-up of it down here. Those do not work for a silent auction. The fact is that in a hotel, sound systems are meant to be used for when a group is quiet, right? If you think about, I don't have a glass up here, but if you think about during a wedding toast, everybody goes ding, 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 and then they're supposed to kiss the bride, or they're ding, 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 and then they go ahead and announcement about the bride and the groom and wishing them well. Everybody gets quiet. Or if you're having a business meeting there, everybody gets quiet because you're having to listen to the speaker. Auctions aren't like that. Auctions are more like a comedy club where people are heckling. I mean, that's a better feel for what an auction's like. Your volume is considerably different than on something like a hotel sound system. I was able to participate in a seminar where we had a speaker from a top-notch sound company. They make speakers. They produce speakers. He came in and he said, the speakers we produce for hotels are not near the quality of something that we would produce for something that's like for an auction or something like that. He says the hotels aren't worried about it because they know that if anybody is going to be relying heavily on sound, they'll bring in their own sound system. The stuff that we install into hotels, yeah, you don't want to use that for an auction. This is a guy from the company who produces the speakers. So hotel sound systems aren't going to cut it. What I'm going to encourage you to do instead is use something like this. We call these speakers on sticks, because they're on a stick. That's about a 7-foot-high speaker there, and you can see there's one there, we have one there, we have one there, we have another one down there, and that, my friends, is half the auction. We have a whole line of speakers because we've got a big silent auction that we're promoting. I'm on that microphone and I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen, come on down to Sports Arena. Come to Sports Arena. We've got 3 tickets down here to the baseball game that's a deal at $400 right now. We've got the golf course. You can get access here at a golf course that you'd never be able to get onto. Here is a member at Congressional, my gosh, well, at any rate, you're promoting. It could even be that you're promoting the raffle. If you've got a raffle, if you've got a game, anything that needs to be pushed, that's what you're putting over the sound system. If you're selling 10 items in your silent auction, I probably wouldn't go to the trouble of putting a sound system in something like this. If you're all in the same space anyway, heck yeah, you need to be promoting that stuff. It's not going to sell itself. There's a sound system console for the silent auction. This is a parish. If you look back here, woo, there is a speaker, and over here off the screen is another one that you cannot see. And then if we go to the front of the room, looky there. Aren't those beauties? Right there on a stick, about 7 feet tall, that project. We like to say it's multi-source sound. You've got speakers in each corner of the room projecting inward, not 2 big speakers at the front that are just blasting the heck out of everybody and hoping those that in the back can hear. Meanwhile, the people at the front are now deaf. No, we're doing around the sound, this multi-source sound around the room so everybody can hear comfortably, and articulation is not a problem from the auctioneer standpoint. People will not bid unless they can understand what's going on. Here we've got, that's another shot from those speakers. Here is Buell speakers. If you're an event planner who really likes to have attractive speakers and you're like, oh, those black things, they're on those stands, they're so ugly, I don't want them, check around. They've got AV companies. This guy works a lot in the museums here in Washington, D.C. They're gorgeous. You can see why. He's made an investment in some attractive speakers. They use him at the museums. Smart man. If you're in a tent, right up there, baby, there they are. In fact, we've added another 2 speakers up there. If you've got a tent that doesn't have a wall, see how this doesn't have a wall here? If it's sideless, you're going to have a greater problem getting that sound distributed than if they have sides. Sound contains better. In this case, it tends to escape underneath it. Number 2, we have the right lighting. I'm going to answer some of these questions over here. Number 2 is the right lighting. So do stores use lighting to sell things? Yeah, I think they do. What I did to show you an example of what I'm talking about is I went down, this is in a neighborhood near me. This was after hours. As you can see, stores are starting to close. How do we know that? Because if I look here, do you think this store is open? No, it's dark. No enter going on. It's dead. What about over here? Nope, nothing going on. But look over here. Light, people, activity. So in our silent auction, do we want to have it romantic and dark, or do we want to have lights and energy? We want lights and energy. That's the hint. So let's go ahead and make sure that our silent auctions look bright. This is an example of a silent auction in, I don't know, maybe 1776. Pre-Revolutionary War days, this is how we did silent auctions. Why it's happening nowadays at the Four Seasons Hotel, I don't know. Read those descriptions that you've put on the table. So candlelight doesn't cut it. Bad. How about this? Here's a story on this. We have a hospice group. Do you see this back here? This was their most expensive item in the silent auction. It was a fur coat. It was tucked back there in the corner. Now, at the time that this was shot, I get there a couple hours before the guests arrive. So this was probably around 4 o'clock before the guests got there. It's still light. Light's coming in. But as it's going to get darker throughout the evening, the only light they were going to use were these sconces. Now, not all, but many will set it up so that there's an auction chair. The auction chair's responsibility is to get items. The gala chair's responsibility is to get bodies in the room. So the gala overarching responsibility for the event, her focus is people, and then the auction chair is tapped really for her connection in getting stuff. So I'm standing there visiting with the auction chair, and she said, I said, well, it looks beautiful. It really looks beautiful, Trudy. You've done a nice job out here. And she says, yeah, though, the gala chair said that she didn't want it to be all bright in here because it would be uncomfortable, and she wants to create this nice environment. So she said she's only wanting us to use these sconces back here. And she says, I just think it's kind of dark because when that light goes down, when the sun sets, it's going to be hard to see, and I'm not sure people are even going to be able to see that coat back there. She says, what do you think? Oh, I said, I don't know. I said, I thought we were here to raise money. And she looked and she said, we are here to raise money. And she stomped right off, and 3 minutes later, whoosh, the lights came on. We had light in the silent auction all night, and I will tell you that coat did sell. So that is an example of the auction chair and the gala chair kind of having it out there, but rightfully so. So what happens if you're in a situation and you're trying to figure out here what's going to happen when the sun goes down? Look, this is a terminal. You can see the planes are out here taking off and landing. It's going to get dark. So they put in canned lights. These canned lights then shine down on the tables. Here's school in a gymnasium. Those of you that are schools participating today and you have a gymnasium auction, you know that these lights are nightmarish to work with. They take a long time to warm up. They were doing an astronaut theme. They wanted to have constellations on the ceiling. They didn't want to have the lights on. But what are you going to do when you've got all these fabulous are going to sell? You got to do something. So they put in the can lights. There you see one of those right down. They're shining down on all of the displays. They also have these ball caps. They attached to a ball cap so that way someone can read something without having to like hold a flashlight. They bought a bunch of these and clamped them down on their outer space type decor. They also then invested in these, which are little lights. They bought these online somewhere. They share these with another school. So they use them for their gala, and then they box them up and take them over to another school who uses them for their gala. But it's just additional lighting on that silent auction table to highlight and make sure people could see. Good ideas. Number 3 is adequate space. I see that we've got a lot of people here that are weighing in. I appreciate you saying where you're from. That's kind of helpful because it's not easy for us to see it offhand when we're glancing over there. I just want to see if there's anything that came in that I should answer now. Lots of people. Okay, Gail asked a question. She said, when you say return on a donation, are you talking about the amount the item is worth and the price it's sold, or overall the percentage of what is spent on auction items and what is made? Gail, I'm talking about for individual ROI, and that's a good question we want to clear up. If somebody donates an item to you worth $100 and you take that, now it's a donation to you, but they are telling you that the fair market value is $100. Maybe it's Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. Ruth's Chris Steakhouse has donated. So when you turn around and sell that in your auction, what are you getting for that? Are you getting 50 bucks? 75? Are you getting full value? Are you selling it for $100? Maybe you're selling it dollars. That's where I was saying earlier, I've got a couple of clients who do better. They'll get a donation. They turn it into more money than what the guy told them it was worth to begin with. Most groups, though, nationally, in their silent auction are making 50 to 65%. So when they're given a donation that's worth $1,000, they're usually making $500 to $650 on that donation. So if we want to move the needle in your auction, how can we start moving that needle? You could theoretically have the same 100 items in your silent auction and start to make more money on each of those, the number of items in your auction, just by doing a better job of marketing them and selling them for more money. You're making more money. You're raising more money because you're selling them for more. You're selling them for more. So hopefully that cleared it up. If it didn't, go back down there, post it again, and said, no, I'm even more confused. You need to explain this again. Okay? I think everybody else is kind of talking about kind of jumping in and kind of introducing still. Okay, yes. All right, let's carry on. Adequate space is number 3. In our culture, and I've spent some time in Canada, not a lot, but I will assume that it's kind of the same. We oftentimes have Canadians on these calls as well, but certainly in the United States, we have a certain mindset of how we're approaching our buying, how we're marketed to, how businesses show us and present us items. If it's cheap, there's not a lot of effort put into the display. If it's expensive, there is. Case in point, I went down to Target. I took a photograph of underwear. This is 5 pairs of panties for $20. See how they're displayed? We throw them on the rack. It's not a big deal. Get that on there. In contrast, Nordstrom's, for those of you that are not familiar, Nordstrom's is a little bit nicer department store, not the same as Saks Fifth Avenue or Neiman Marcus, but kind of better than Macy's. So at Nordstrom's, the underwear is hanging up, and the price is different. 3 for $45. We start to see this whole metric even in our underwear. So what do we think? What happens to our buyers when they walk into this? When they walk into a silent auction that looks like this, have they been conditioned that this is cheap or that this is expensive? I'm going to argue that's cheap. This is a place to get a deal. We don't need to spend a lot of money here. Look at everything they've got. My gosh, we can just go ahead and get all kinds of stuff for dirt cheap. It's a garage sale. That's the mentality. Look at all that. I'd be willing to bet, too, if we went back and did the numbers, which we didn't, so I don't have it. I'm just hypothesizing here. But I'd be willing to bet that on this first row here, I'd be willing to bet the ROI was higher than on the second row because people just get overwhelmed. So they'll start paying attention to what's close to them and they kind of ignore the rest. Not cool. This is not what we want. Look at this. Seriously, ladies, when's the last time you had 8.5-inch hips? Is that right? 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. Yeah, look at that. Can you stand there side by side with someone else and look at this and read these carefully? No, this is 5 for $20 underwear right here that we're looking at. Now, in contrast, we start to see some space. It's like we're walking into Tiffany's, and the bracelet that's $40,000 is on a pedestal, and the light is shining down on it. That's what we start to see here. So we have 1, 2, 3 items per 8-foot table. Nice big displays. Beautiful. Check this one out. Looking pretty good, too. I see the table here. It looks like they got 2 items on that table. Looks like 1, 2, 3, 4. They're averaging about 3 items per 8-foot table as well. Showing some space, allowing people to come up and look at the things, spend some time. This one's nice too, looking good. These are those skinny tables. They look like they're maybe 12-foot tables. Nice. Change number 4 is props. You want guests to be able to experience the item here. You want them to be able to taste it, to touch it, to smell it. The more you can get experiential, the better it's going to sell. Apple strudel. Before you buy, you get to try. They've got samples out there of the apple strudel. I feel like I'm in Costco or Walmart. You know, they're handing out the samples. Here, give it a shot. Here we've got a baseball bat We've got a picture of the stadium. Now, we are not selling the baseball bat here. We are selling a game. But what this is serving as is a prop. It's enticing. It brings people in. They see it. It's fetching. They'll go in and they'll look at more depth to understand whether or not they want it. This is kind of what we're going for here, is what can we do? Some people will just stick out a. Here is a Latin American theme. It looks nice. This is our merchandising. If any of you are in cities where Anthropologie is a store, I love that store. There's not much in there that fits me, but I love going into that store. I like looking at their merchandising. They have excellent window displays. In fact, I'll tell you something. I have a free download on my website called Auction Item Ideas. It's something I produce every year. And one of the ideas in there came from last year's auction. All of the ideas in there came from last year's auctions because it's updated every year. But one of the ideas in there was that we had a woman who worked at Anthropologie, or she knew someone who worked at Anthropologie. And so what we sold in the auction was the chance that you got to go in and do a window display at Anthropologie. If you don't know the store, this isn't going to mean anything to you. But if you spent any time in Anthropologie and know what a great job they do of merchandising, you're going to understand that for some people, this would be totally cool. It's crafty. It's hands-on. You're getting to help design stuff. They do these fabulous things with fruit and tissues that we sold in our auction with a chance that you got to go in and help design a window display for Anthropologie. So this item will speak more of to those of you that are schools on the line. We have first position in the carpool lane. What do we have for the display? Is this not cute? Matchbox cars. Does this get the point across, number 1, 2, and 3? I think it does. I think it does. Please check your internet connection and press OK to load the application. Hey, Steve, this is what happened before we started, too. And when I did that.
Here, presenter. Oh, there you go. You disappeared from me. Graduate here. You look in here. There you are. There you go.
Okay.
Are you back in now?
I am back in, and I'm just popping over to kind of get everything else set up here.
Cool.
And, oh, there it is.
There, I see you.
I'm back. All right, very good. Let me scroll back down to where we were. I included photos because I wanted you to understand that if you're a high-end gala, maybe you've got one of the top events in New York City or Seattle or San Francisco, it wouldn't be unusual to have $17,000 earrings in your silent auction, as this group did. Now, they had a table that had these higher-end pieces. They were right there on the table. They weren't hidden away. They weren't just photos. It was a touchy-feely. You could actually see them. They had a security guard nearby. I won't deny that, but they had them out so that people could appreciate them. The other point that I would say, not necessarily on something that's this expensive, if you are selling jewelry of any sort, please include a hand that on people, show it how it looked. It makes a big difference because you want, and at a silent auction, like we said, we're on a limited time. We don't have a lot of time for these people to make a decision. So we want to be able to ensure that they've got all the information they need right then in order to make a buy now decision. They can put that on, they can look at it, we can compliment them. That looks fabulous on you. That color just goes with your hair. So here is an auction that I did the first year. I have I have two other slides from year 2 and year 3. The silent auction looks substantially different, but I wanted you to at least see an example of what I don't consider a good representative of a great silent auction. If you were to, well, in fact, I walked in with my team for this particular event. It had about 500 people who were attending. This is at the Ritz-Carlton, so it wasn't a bad zip code by any means. Walked in with my team and they said, Sherry, should we help them set up? And I said, oh, they're set up. This is it. This is decor. It's not for sale. This, however, is for sale. Nothing else had a display. The next year it looked a lot better. We worked with them. We got that taken care of. What about this one? Look, nothing. Nothing. Is this drawing your guests over to check it out? I think not. Change number 5 here. So some of those were more in the merchandising area, on-site merchandising. What we're going to now is the bid sheet itself. Now, the purpose of a bid sheet is to convey the bid. That's it. There shouldn't be a description on the bid sheet. The purpose of the bid sheet, convey the bid. So what can we do on the bid sheets in order to encourage people to buy? There are several things that we can do, but the one I'm going to share with you today is guaranteed bid. This can be controversial. It's one of those things that I've seen committees debate, and if you are a volunteer, or even if you're not, if you're dealing with people and you just know this isn't worth fighting about, then just give it up. Don't even try it. But it is something that will make you more money. It will make you more money. But it's not always a fan favorite of the committee. If you think like a business, businesses make it exceedingly easy for us to see. Do you want to do a layaway? How about a lease on this car? Do you check, cash, credit card, PayPal? We're taking PayPal now. Bitcoin, we got it. All of these different ways to buy things. So when we think like a business, we want to make it easy for our guests to spend money as well. One way that we can do that is through what we call a guaranteed purchase, a guaranteed bid. It's called Buy It Now on eBay, but we do not want to use that term on your sheets. My understanding is that eBay has trademarked that line, so you do not want to use it on your sheets. You got to find a different name. Instant purchase, take me home, lots of different options out there for you. So guaranteed purchase is an opportunity to buy an item outright, and it includes most often a premium. So if we see over here, we've got a donation of a gift card to a restaurant, and all the bidding can take place here, but then at the bottom, what do you see there? Guaranteed bid, $465. But the value is, it looks like 306 maybe. Let me just see here. Yeah, that'd be about right. So that $465 represents 150%, 152 technically, 150% of the value. $465 is greater than the value, but if you really want this item, fine. For a premium price, put your bid number down there. You can buy it outright and take the thing home right now. We have ways of implementing it. The rule of thumb is generally about 150 to 200% of value, but this does vary. It varies with your timeline, program, the item itself. It could be 80% of value. It could be 500% of value. You'll need to figure that out. Here at a school auction, this was middle school carpool, something or the other. The guaranteed purchase price was $2,065, it looks like. So that's what made them happy. They were saying in their committee, you know, if we sell it for $2,065, we should be high-fiving each other. If your committee is a glass is half empty sort of committee, and you're going to be sitting there going, we could have sold it. If that's your committee, it ain't worth it. Don't use it. You don't want to sit there and fight your committee and say, I know we could have made more money. I know we could have made more money. Just say, you know what, we're not going to use it. But I will tell you, you get this right, you're going to make more money. It's just sometimes a hard sell. The reasons that I like it are threefold. First, it attracts bidders through psychology. There's an enormous amount of psychology in offer. Just scratching the surface here today. But if you are walking by the tables, and in this case you can see there's still a bid sheet here, there's still a bid sheet here, but this one, oh my gosh, there's no bid sheet. That's because somebody already bought it at the guaranteed purchase price. This looks to be an iPad that was purchased. So when people walk by something like this, the first thing they do is they stop and they look at what they've missed. And I will walk up to people and I'll say, oh ma'am, I'm so sorry, but that one is already sold. And she'll say, I know, I just want to see what I missed. Okay. So she reads through it, and then she starts paying attention to everything else that's selling on the silent auction table. I'm using the pronoun she as well because women are our bigger bidders in the silent auction. Men traditionally tend to be our bigger bidders in the auction. I'm going to cover that in this next subject here. But the sold as buy me now, it's a visual way to start refocusing people back on the table so that they can see what. Number 2, guys like it. If you want to get the men out of your bar and into your bid sheets, this is what you do. You put on guaranteed purchase because they're going to be interested in buying women. I'm just going to go with the stereotype. Generally speaking, a lot of men are not going to be big fans of shopping. If they need a white shirt to wear with their suit, they're going to walk into, pick a store, Macy's, and they're going to buy the white shirt. They're not going to walk in there and go, oh, man, they're kind of expensive. I think I got a coupon at home. I'm going to go wait. They're not going to say, oh, they're kind of expensive. You know, maybe in 2 weeks they'll go on sale. I'll just hold off on the white shirts now. That's not generally how a lot of guys think. They go in, they need the white shirt, they buy the white shirt. So if you're asking them in a silent auction to circle around and get a deal, they're not so inclined to do that. Here's an example that was down in Naples, an event I was working, and it centered around this jewelry tree. There was a woman that had a jewelry that she was getting out of at-home based jewelry business. And so she had donated the remaining pieces to the nonprofit. The nonprofit had gone out, I thought they said to Costco or Sam's Club, something like that, and they purchased a jewelry tree to display all of this jewelry, and they were selling it all as one package. The woman walked by. She had bid on this item at least once, maybe even twice, and she kept circling around just looking at it. I said, it's a lot of jewelry, isn't it? It's very nice. And she says, well, you know, it's not even the jewelry. She says, I've been looking for a jewelry tree, and I really like that one. I'm like, oh, well, what do you know? And I'm not going to tell her that they bought it at Costco. So she continues to circle around. This time she brings her husband, and standing there with her husband, and I'm behind the table because I'm talking to people and getting them to buy. And so she's standing back there and she's pointing, and he kind of looked up at the bid sheet and he's looking down to see what the current bid is and everything, and he sees at the bottom instant purchase. And he kind of puts his finger there and he says, well, if I put my bid number down there, do we just get it? And I said, yes, sir. You'll just take it home for that price right there. No one will bid against you. It's yours. And he looks at her and he goes, well, why wouldn't we do that? Just like it's the most obvious thing in the world, honey. Why wouldn't we just go ahead and buy it for twice the value? So that's what they did. His number down, he got it. Men like it. Bring them back into your silent auction that way. Third, it makes it easier for your checkout team. If you're using volunteers for your checkout, and you may not be, you may have a professional team or you've got something else going on, but if you're using volunteers, sometimes volunteers can get a little rattled when the items start to come from the silent auction and to be moved into the processing. If you can sell a few items before you close one section and have 50 items show up at their desk, this starts to acclimate them. So they can get it. It can be like one of these things that they, it comes to them and they're like, oh, okay, all right, what am I supposed to do? She said to put it over here, and I rip off the top copy, and then I input this over here. It's just a chance for them to get into the groove before you close the silent auction table that has 40 items on it, and suddenly they're deluged with 40 different items. So it's nice for your checkout team in that sense. So what have we covered? We have barely scratched the surface, but we've given you 5 juicy ones. Sound, lighting, spacing, props, and use of guaranteed purchase on the bid sheet. One thing I'm going to point out to you is that if you are doing a silent auction and you're like, Sherry, what I have just is manna from heaven, I'm ready for more. This is a program that I have that's shipping next week. It's called Silent Auction Marketing Savvy. It's a 90-minute program. There's a DVD of a webinar that's very similar to this format. You see me talking to you and so forth. It was a recording that was about a month ago. And the template, the workbook in it has some additional resources. There's a private web page that you go to get downloadable bid sheets that will do increments for you. It also has extra videos in it. It's a big program. But that's available to you right now for $79 at the link that I'm showing on the website. If you want to get it, you can go there and sign up and get it before it actually is kind of released. This is the pre-release right now. But what about items? People say, what about items? Do you have any help with procurement? Well, when I launched my business, I realized that one of the things I wanted to do is share some of these cool items that I'm selling every year and specifically help people with items that are going to sell for overvalue or have a better shot of selling for overvalue, higher ROIs. So I pulled in January of 2009, I pulled together this, which was called What Sold Great in 2008. And it was the top 100 items that I sold for overvalue in the auctions that I worked the previous year. I have done one of those every year. And right now it's called What Sold Supreme in 2013. This is what I alluded to earlier, that I was talking about the anthropology item. So What Sold Supreme in 2013 is currently the free gift on my web. Head over to redappleauctions.com. In the upper right-hand side is a little video of me talking and so forth. Put in your email there. It's instantly emailed out to you. I don't get involved. So if you didn't get it, you might have mistyped your email. It happens a lot. But you can put your email up there. It's automatically sent out. And then I would encourage you to share that with your team, your procurement team. Go through it. Highlight things. It's amazing what you can do if you put some heads together on some of these items. It really works very well. And I am wrapping up with just enough time here to answer some questions to you. That's great. On the page in front of you, you can see some places where you can reach out to me. We're on a lot of the different social medias and so forth. And for that matter, I might an auction near you in the very near future, so that could be even an in-person meeting as well. Steve, I'll turn this back over to you.
Great. I'm getting a lot of good tweets. People are actually emailing me, telling me how much they're enjoying this presentation. Really cool stuff. There's a lot of things that you talked about that I had never heard or read a lot of auction item people talk about. So thanks for all the great information. Hopefully everyone enjoyed it as much as I did. I think they did, based on some of the chat here. So we've got a lot of questions. I'm just going to kind of scroll through these and pick out some that I think look good. Jennifer's got a question about props. Do you run into issues where guests assume that the props go along with the item? What do you tell people about props and not getting that confused?
That's a great question, Jennifer. And in the one photo that I showed you, which had the bat, for instance, that was a prop. And they usually will put a sticker or a tent card on it that says for display only, or they will say prop. Case in point, one of the auctions that I was doing in May in Philadelphia, they had a wonderful prop for one of their items. It was a behind-the-scenes tour of a penitentiary, and they had these handcuffs that were out on the table that had the word prop on them. But for some reason, and we can all hypothesize why, people were playing with those all night long. So they'd come by and they'd pick them up, and then I'd walk by the table again, and they'd been flipped over, and then so I'd turn it back over so people could see that it was a prop, and lo and behold, I'd walk by 5 minutes later, they were turned over again, so they were getting a lot of action. What I would say is just make sure that it's clearly labeled. You might want to use a fluorescent sticker to make it more visible, to make sure it pops. But just put for display only or prop for display only to make it clear that what you're putting out there on the table is not part of the purchase. Cool.
Great advice.
Yeah.
Interesting question here from Gail. Gail is wondering, what are your thoughts on adding the value to the bid sheets as opposed to omitting it? So actually putting the value of the item right there on the sheet. Is that a good idea to do?
Gail, that is an excellent question, and I will subscribe to what the IRS says. The IRS says you have to.
Oh, there you go.
We don't have an option in it. It needs to be put somewhere before the bidder makes a decision to bid. So if you're only putting it on the receipt, cut it. The impact is that if later on the person is audited and that comes to be a point of question, they don't get to do the tax off, but you, the nonprofit, pay the interest, the penalty, and the tax.
There you go.
So,
put the value on there.
Fair market value, it needs to be somewhere, and it needs to be somewhere before they make a decision, as they say, to raise their hand. So in a silent auction, they would need to understand the fair market value before they make a decision to bid. That's where you would do it. Yeah, that's also one of those points of contention in committees. I'll let you figure that out with your committee, but I've sat in a few of those meetings before where people chatter about that for a while. So we'll see how you do with it. Good luck.
Well, here's one from James, and this is a question that I've often wondered myself, having been a part of planning, auctions and events and just attending them in general. So James is saying, if you have a silent auction that starts before the program, do you recommend closing the silent auction once the program starts, or leaving it open until after the program and maybe the sit-down dinner ends? Do you think that would generate some more activity if you left it open a little bit longer than whenever the program actually starts?
Right. It's a common question, isn't it? And there's some thinking there that, well, gosh, if I leave it open longer, will I make more money? There's that concern too. The good news is this. Studies have been done that if you close it before, during, or after, people bid at generally 2 times. They bid right when they get there, when you open the auction, if you want to look at it that way, and then they bid right before you close it. So if you choose to close it at 7, they're going to start getting serious about bidding at 6:45. They're going to go back and check everything because at 7 is the deadline. If you say it's midnight, then at 11:45 you can expect guests to get serious about closing. I'm a big believer that we need to control our crowd. We don't want our crowd to control us. And we control our crowd through a number of ways, the timeline being one of them. So if we have a schedule and we're going to close that, we want to close it on time and drive people to the next element. If the silent auction is your appetizing section to the entree, which is the live auction or the program, I believe, as he was just, he has a program, maybe he's got a live auction in that or not. I'm going to encourage you to close it before the live. There are exceptions where you might not. Luncheon auctions oftentimes will extend it a bit because they're on a very short time frame and they need to have a little bit more time. You want to try to have about 90 minutes for that silent auction. If something is askew and not allowing you that, you want to try to build that buffer in. So I would close the silent auction, direct people into the ballroom. That's done. You can let your volunteers start to process all of that to get it taken care of. And meanwhile, you're moving on to tray, both in the food service and in live auction. That's where your big ticket items are and the more excitement usually is.
Yeah, because you don't want to cannibalize your live auction. That's a really good point.
Yeah, and it doesn't, I wouldn't say it even cannibalizes it, but it's not making you any more money. I mean, the research has shown you're going to control them. So if you close it later, okay, they're going to wait later to bid. So why not give your volunteers help them out by closing it earlier and allowing them the extra time to process it and so forth. Yeah.
Cool.
So.
Well, we're about out of time, and I know we didn't get to all the questions, and there's a few here still in the chat. And Sherry, is it fair to say that people can reach out to you maybe on Twitter or social media or email to get some more questions answered?
I see one here I do want to answer, though, as I'm just kind of, and I apologize, I'm not going through all of this. I'm just kind of glancing through, but I saw something that just jumped out here, though. The question was, is it possible to have too many items in your silent auction, is asking that. And there is a formula that you can use. The idea is that auctions are based upon the principle of scarcity. So if you think back to your American economics government courses back in high school, you learned about supply and demand. If you've got great demand and limited supply, prices rise. You got tons of supply, nobody the entices fall. The same is, remember we've been talking about psychology? It's this whole same concept here. So if I walk into your auction and it's a garage sale because you've got so much stuff, prices are already starting to fall. The way that you can get that balance then is that you want to create two buyers for, you want to create two items on the table. So for instance, let's say that you've got 400 guests attending your evening function. And this evening function, generally people are coming with a spouse, a partner, divided by 2, we'll get down to our bidding units. 400 divided by 2, 200 units. 200 wallets are in the room. 200 potential buyers are in the room. If we take 200 divided by 2, we're now at 100 items. 100 is the magic number for you to target for your silent auction. If you tell me, Sherry, we're doing a bachelorette auction, nobody here is coming with a spouse. Or you say we're doing a golf tournament auction, nobody's coming with a spouse. All the guys play all day or all the women play all day, but their spouses don't join them at the end of the day. Should we really have to do that? No, in your case, you don't divide by that extra 2. What you do is you have 100 golfers, you divide by 2 once, 50 items. That's your target for the silent auction set down. And if the number of items in your auction, well, you can get more people to attend your event. I've just found it's a lot harder to improve the attendance than it is to control the items. So keep that element of scarcity in play. That's going to help you a great deal as you start to plan for your functions.
Cool. Great advice, Sherry. Thank you so much for teasing with us for about an hour or so. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, my pleasure. Julie, hey there. Julie's on the line here. She's one of my former auction chairs, and she has a fabulous chocolate shop out in Vienna. Anyway, we'll go back now. I just want to say hello, everybody, and if you're just joining me from the Red Apple Auction site, it's great to see you all as well. I am over at any of these different sites. You can join me at any of these areas. I'm happy to reach out and connect with you there. And we've got a lot going on over at Red Apple Auctions as well, lots of different webinars and things like that that'll help you out as well, not just on silent, but on other elements. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, this is fun. Please do check out all of Sherry's links there. Follow her on Twitter. Check out her blog. Good person to follow for sure as we're heading into event season here in the last stretch of the year. So I just want to say a final thanks to everyone for hanging out with us, spending an hour out of your busy day with us. Just so everyone knows, we do these webinars once a week here at Bloomerang. So check out our webinar page. Just go to bloomerang.co. You'll see a resources tab there. We got some cool webinars coming up in September. They're all totally free, totally educational. So check those out. You may find a topic that interests you. This is a lot of fun. So just so everyone knows, I will be sending out the recording and the slides a little later on this afternoon. So look for an email from me. So we'll leave it at that. Sherry, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
And we will talk to you all next week, hopefully. So have a great weekend.